The company page displays the company details as entered within the company profile. Like the other modules, the lower portion is where specific contact and phone information can be entered, in this case for the sales order module. Moving on to the processing page, the first option shows the functional currency. This was determined when the company profile was established. However, notice the field to the right called multi-currency. If the multi-currency module is installed, and if multi-currency was selected within both the company profile of Common Services and within Accounts Receivable, this option is automatically activated and is shown for reference purposes only. If the multi-currency module is not installed or activated for this database, this checkbox will not appear here at all. The rate type to the right determines the exchange rate type to use as a default as defined within the currency tables. The Calculate Backorder Quantities field determines if the system will automatically calculate backorder quantities. For example, if selected and a quantity of 10 items are entered, but only 7 are indicated in the Shipped field, because there may only be 7 currently in stock, the system calculates a backorder quantity of 3 automatically, and retains the order as active. If this option is not selected, then the backorder quantity will default to 0, and require the field to be populated manually to record the fact that there is a backorder quantity. Otherwise, if the field is left 0, the detail line will be marked as complete, causing the remaining 3 items to be tracked as a lost sale. The Keep Transaction History option maintains transaction details of documents that have been processed within order entry. Although saving transaction history does utilize disk space, normally this option is selected in order to keep transaction details for a time period sufficient for reviewing or auditing purposes. This way, invoices, for example, can be reprinted at any time. Transaction information can be cleared at any time, so retaining it for at least a short time can be beneficial. The Allow Non-Existent Customers option allows the ability to enter and post sales order documents for a customer that is not yet added in Accounts Receivable. Regardless of the setting, a transaction for a non-existent customer cannot post in Accounts Receivable until the customer is added. It can only be posted within order entry. However, if orders are constantly being entered for new customers, and the customer information needs to be retained within Accpac, this option may be a good choice. Particularly if there is no time to add them as a customer, possibly because they are waiting, or if the sales clerk does not have the appropriate rights to add customers. Just be sure to enter the customer using the same customer number assigned here before attempting to post the batch within Accounts Receivable. To have items entered on orders automatically committed, in other words, reserved for orders, select the Default Quantity Committed field. If items are currently in stock, this option places the quantity ordered within the Quantity Committed field. The items will be reserved for this customer order. In multi-currency databases, the Calculate Tax Reporting Amounts Automatically option determines the default setting for this field when transactions are entered. If a transaction is being entered where the tax authority for the transaction has a tax reporting currency that is different from the source or functional currency, this field appears for the transaction and is either selected or not selected based on how this field is selected. The setting can be changed when entering transactions. If the tax authority isn't different, then this field does not appear for the transaction because it doesn't apply. When the field does appear for a transaction, and when the field is selected, it calculates the amount in the tax reporting currency by applying the exchange rate between the source currency and the tax reporting currency. Next, select whether to have either the stocking unit of measure or the pricing unit of measure appear as the default when entering items on sales orders. Similarly, the item weight or item pricing weight unit measure can be defaulted when entering items on sales orders. Process both a sales order and an invoice at the same time, then specify yes in the default Create Invoice option field. This way, while entering a sales order, the system will process not only the sales order, but a shipment and invoice. Remember, items can be received, such as sand or gravel, by truckload, but sold by the bag. Because each truckload may be different, the price of sand or gravel can be tracked by truckload, but stocked by bag. The default template code is where default settings can be assigned when entering transactions. The template code has to already exist, however, if it does, then it can save data entry time because template codes contain specific defaults to assist with sales orders. More on this later. The default quote expiration days field determines the number of days order entry retains quotes for a customer. The actual number of expiration days can be specified on a particular quote, so this is just the default. To process and post invoices during the entry of sales orders, in other words, indicating no here doesn't mean you can't process both, nor does entering yes mean you are forced to process both. It just indicates if the system is to default to this setting if a quantity is entered within the shipped field when entering orders. Directly shipping items on sales orders is an option that can be determined for each order. The next field identifies how order entry is to react when a credit note is entered against an invoice that already has a credit note assigned. Either ignore the fact that there is another credit note and be allowed to process another one without any indication, produce a warning giving the option to proceed or not, possibly after checking to see if the credit note being entered is a duplicate, or display an error message, preventing the posting of another credit note entirely. The Post AR Batches option determines when and how customer invoices entered in order entry are to update accounts receivable. The options that display here depend on how transactions are costed within inventory control. In IC Options, if you elected to cost transactions immediately when the transactions are posted, then the options here are during posting or on request using Create Batch icon. If you elected to cost transactions at the end of the day using Day-End Processing, then the options here are during Day-End Processing or on request using Create Batch icon. If during posting is selected here, order entry creates and posts each invoice to the customer's account immediately when it is posted within order entry. If during Day-End Processing is selected, order entry retains the posting of the customer invoices temporarily until the Day-End Processing routine within inventory control is performed. And if on request using the Create Batch icon is selected, order entry retains the processing of the customer invoices for accounts receivable temporarily until the Create Batch icon within the periodic processing icon of order entry is selected. The choice selected can have a large impact on the speed of processing transactions within order entry, as well as the number of AR batches that order entry creates. Therefore, if a substantial amount of invoices in the course of a day are processed, it may be better to use either the during Day-End Processing or on request using the Create Batch icon options. The lower left portion of the window is where salesperson commission calculations are determined, if at all. If the intention is to have order entry maintain sales levels and commission rates for each salesperson, then this option needs to be selected. Commissions for salespeople can be calculated by the sales dollar amount sold or the sales margin amount earned on an item. Commission will then be calculated on those item categories where commissions are allowed. At the top right section of the window is where the option to accumulate sales history is determined. If the option is selected, it indicates to keep information about the items that have been sold as well as the customers that items have been sold to. This information can be viewed when entering orders or on selected printed reports. The information can be saved based on a fiscal year or a calendar year, where a period can be a week, representing 52 periods a year, a month, representing 12 periods a year, all the way up to annually, of which everything will be represented in a single period for the year. Below sales history is where sales statistics can be maintained. If sales statistics are accumulated, the ability to modify the amounts is available by selecting the Allow Edit of Statistics option, either to establish beginning values or to make corrections. Like sales history, statistics can be accumulated by calendar year or fiscal year, and again based on a weekly schedule all the way up to an annual schedule. When setting up a new database, you may want to allow the ability to edit the statistical amounts to establish previous period values. However, normally, this option is not selected when the system is up and running because Accpac automatically updates the values as transactions are entered. But there may be times when corrections need to be made. One other point regarding history and statistics is to not change the time period from which the amounts are tracked within the middle of the accounting year. The reason is because the previous posted periods will no longer match for comparison purposes. For example, if you were tracking history or statistics monthly and then elected to change them to weekly, what was month 123 is now week 123, so future periods will not represent the same time frame as previous posted periods. The last information to specify on the processing page is to determine customer credit checks. If credit limits were elected to be tracked for customers within accounts receivable, determine what the system will reference when the system performs the credit check. Will the system include unposted accounts receivable transactions that are waiting to be posted in batches, include transactions within order entry that have been generated but not sent or posted through to accounts receivable yet, and or include transactions that affect the customer's outstanding balance from other applications, such as a program written by a Sage Accpac business partner that takes advantage of this feature. The Documents page determines the length of the document number for each document type, and if a prefix is desired. The system uses the designated next number as the starting point and increments from there for each document type. The length of any document number can be up to 22 characters, including the prefix. The lower portion of this window is where the document aging periods are entered, to be used on specific reports, such as the Aged Orders Report.
Now let's take a look at the General Ledger integration function.